Hey everybody, what's up? It's Will with ScheduleFly, and I'm really excited today. I've got Nick Tedeschi on the phone, and Nick is one of the first folks, as I've mentioned, in our Restaurant Owners Uncorked series, it's not an owner. We're looking forward to talking to some folks that are not owners but love what they do, are great at what they do, and whose owners highly recommend that they're the folks within their organization we speak to. So Nick is the head brewer at the Post Brewing Company in Boulder, Colorado. The Post is part of Big Red F Restaurant Group, which is a phenomenal group out in, I would say Boulder, but in Denver as well, and several areas there. And Nick is phenomenal at his craft. He has got a lot of passion for it, and we're just going to dive right into it. So, Nick, thanks for taking the time today.
Of course. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited about it.
So, well, give me some backstory, man. You're the head brewer there. Like, how did you get into the business? Were you in the restaurant business prior? Or did you brew your own beer, or what happened?
Both and. So, a little bit about me. I'm from Connecticut originally. I moved out here about 8 years ago, close to 8 years ago. Always worked front of house. I worked in a restaurant serving back in Connecticut. And when I moved out here, I almost immediately got a job at Zolo Grill, which is a Big Red F restaurant right in Boulder, Southwestern food. Got a job serving there. I've always been into beer. I've always loved drinking beer. I mean, who doesn't? But my dad was always a home brewer, so when I was like 13, 14, I started home brewing with him. So I always kind of had it in the back of my mind that I'd love to do something with beer. So after the 3 years at Zolo, Dave Query, owner of Big Red F, announced he was opening a fried chicken restaurant and brewery. So I pounced on that. There was no way they were keeping me out of that place. So when the original Post Brewing Company opened in Lafayette in January of 2014, I was part of the opening crew, started as a bartender. Our original brewmaster there was kind of doing everything himself for the first few months. And then they needed to bring someone on to do cellar work, which is basically, kegging beer, cleaning tanks, filtering beer, everything in a brewery, but actually producing the beer. And then sales and then deliveries. So I think with my front of house experience helped a lot being able to sell it. And then just my love of, making beer from doing it with my dad when I was a teenager. I picked up on the production side of it pretty quick. So I wore all of those hats for 1 year. And then they eventually asked me if I wanted to pursue sales full-time or production full-time. And I chose production. Glad I did. I worked there for 4 years. And then we just recently opened up a brewery in Boulder. So I've since transferred over here, and I'm the head brewer here. I run this show. Throughout my 16 years of working, it's always been with a restaurant attached. So I worked front of house for about 11 years. And then for the past about 5 years, even though I'm working in the brewery, I still have, a restaurant attached. I'm still doing pre-shifts. I don't know. I really like that aspect of it. I like telling my staff and talking to my staff about beer and how they can sell it. It's cool. I like working in restaurants, so I'm glad I'm able to make beer while working in a restaurant.
Yeah, it's a perfect mix for you, man. I can tell. How did you wind up out in Colorado?
Small town Connecticut. I'm from a town called Mystic.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard of the movie Mystic Pizza.
Sure.
It's a coming-of-age tale of 3 young women. Starring Julia Roberts. Breakthrough role for Julia Roberts, by the way. She was huge after that. So I'm from that tiny little town. It's right on the water. There's really not much to do professionally in that town. It's close to Boston. It's close to New York. But I don't know. I had an adventurer's mind and an adventurer's heart, and I wanted to kind of explore the country a little bit, and I wanted a change. So when I got to the mountains, that was a big change from the ocean, and they just kind of sucked me in a little bit. I think what really got me was when I was driving across country. I had a friend who lived in Denver, finally got to Denver, and it was first week in November, and he's like, let's go for a hike. And it was probably 78 degrees. So I was going on a hike in November in shorts and a t-shirt, and I was, I could get used to that. So I think that's one reason why I stuck out here too.
Nice. So you started at Zolo. Did you ask around? Because I asked this because you're part of a phenomenal organization. I have a ton of
I know.
respect for Big Red F, and we've been doing this at Schedule Fly a long time. I've worked with a lot of folks, interviewed a lot of folks, met a lot of owners. Tons of respect for Dave. Love what y'all are doing as an organization. So, was that just by luck, or were you asking around, or how did that happen?
I'd say a little bit of both. So when I moved here, I was like, oh, I want to do something with beer. So I applied to a couple breweries just for serving jobs or whatever. Mountain Sun. At the time, the Walnut Tavern was still open, so there. I was looking in Boulder, but then I was also looking for serving jobs too. And I had a friend of a friend who knew someone's cousin's uncle who worked at Zolo. So they got me an interview. When I went in, the GM at the time, her name was Katie. She had spent 2 years living in Mystic. So we just hit it off. Very random that I would meet someone who lived in my hometown for 2 years and taught at the high school across town for a year. So we hit it off really quickly. And then, it was just, circumstance that I got the job there. I probably, I turned down a third interview with Mountain Sun. So who knows what path that would have led me down. But the second I started working at Zolo, it just kind of felt like home. There's a culture that Big Red F's created in all of its restaurants where I know it sounds tacky and cliche, but the F stands for family, and it was really much like a family there. Just a great, hardworking culture that, everyone hung out together and everyone spent time outside of work together, and I think that culture right there is kind of what sucked me in.
That's awesome. So, okay, so you've made your way here. You're now the head brewer there at the Post. What do you? I gathered a little bit of this, but tell me, what is it that really what gets you fired up? What do you get really excited about with what you do on a daily basis?
What gets me fired up on a daily basis, and it has since I've started at Big Red F, is just having the full support of management and ownership. I know Dave has my back in everything. Anything that goes wrong or any issues I'm having, I know I can go to him and I'm going to be heard, respected. There's a sense of your company having your back.
Yeah.
And again, it plays into that whole family thing. It is like family. It's for Dave, someone from one of his restaurants has issues or concerns or anything. It's he views it as probably one of his children having an issue. It's a very familiar family-like vibe to it. And what really gets me fired up is I know I have that support, and with that support comes a tremendous amount of trust and freedom. I have a lot of freedom, and I've been given a lot of trust in my position throughout my years with Big Red F. So that gets me super amped. That makes me work really hard. It's a sense of holding yourself accountable, and I felt that front of house, and I also feel that in the brewery too.
Yeah, there's a book I read a few years ago. I really enjoyed it. It's called Drive, and it's about what motivates people. And the short version is it's 3 things that this guy believes really are what are the key motivators for people in their careers, which is autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And you've just articulated that you have all 3 of those, which is, just kind of nails it. And I think Big Red F has really figured that out.
I think autonomy is a huge one. It's all of the employees of Big Red F, we're given this platform to express ourselves creatively, be leaders. Everyone's given the opportunity to be a leader. And, there's a lot of trust that comes with that. And, the people who want that autonomy get it. There's a huge amount of freedom here. Yeah.
So, so I was actually, it was just a couple of days ago, I was with my dad, and we were out, and we were in North Carolina, and we were in Raleigh, and there's just a lot of breweries there, a lot of microbreweries, and they're all over the place, and there's a ton where you are. There's a ton everywhere now.
I know. North Carolina just recently blew up over the past 10 years. And
it's nuts.
I think one of the main reasons is the water there is so great. There's great brewing water there. so you don't have to do too much treatment to your water.
Okay, I was going to ask. I mean, particularly Asheville's just gone crazy.
Yeah, Asheville's great, and it's centralized on the East Coast, so it's a good hub. New Belgium opened a place out there.
Yep.
It's a nice centralized East Coast hub. So if you have a big distribution arm, you're able to reach New England. You're also able to reach Florida. Chicago's not too far west. So yeah, North Carolina's cool.
Well, one thing I want to ask you about is we were sitting there saying, how do they all make it? I mean, there's just so many, and I think a lot of it's that they're not just brewing beer now. They're brewing beer, and they have a restaurant attached, and you can go hang out there. And we got a bunch of them here in Charlotte, not far from me.
Yeah.
But tell me about that. I mean, what do you do to separate yourself? I mean, I'm sure that there's sort of a rising tide lifts all boats mentality where you guys support each other and want others to do well. But then again, you do have a ton of competition. So I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
It is, and I mean, it's everywhere in the country. Sadly, around here lately, there have been a lot of brewery closures.
Oh, really?
Some that were, around for 20 years, and some that have only been around for 3 or 4 years. I think what really sets us apart, and not just us, but any successful brewery around here, is just your story, and being really aligned with what you're putting out and what your story is. Anybody could really make a beer and put it out, but you got to be able to tell a story with that. There's this very common mentality of, there's a brewery, these 2 guys or gals quit their 9-to-5 day jobs to open up a brewery because it was their passion. That, there's been thousands of those now. That's not enough now.
Mm-hmm.
You need to build a following beyond that. I think what helps for us is we are a restaurant group. Big Red F primarily does restaurants, and at this point we have 4 post-brewing companies, 2 of which brew beer, but we have a very clear concept. It's fried chicken and easy drinking beer.
Yeah.
Beer and food that pair really well together. And the story of comfort food and comfort beer, I think really resonates with people. So, just having a little something beyond, we're just going to open a brewery and see how it goes. Because right now there's just so many of those. So we've found success with the brew pub model. And that's another aspect of it. A lot of the breweries that have closed are, just microbreweries.
Yeah.
Whereas brew pubs are actually a little more successful because we do have this front of house component, this restaurant side that, can support the brewery in those first few years, because it's hard. There's, a lot of options for people, and everyone's trying to do something to stand out. So yeah. I think coming into the game, like if you were to open a brewery, you got to have your mission statement. You got to have your story. Otherwise, other people are going to tell your story for you, and it might not be the one that you want told about you. So that's kind of where we've succeeded, is, having a clear vision, and just really, really sticking to that.
Yeah, for sure. How's the chicken there? I bet it's phenomenal.
It's crazy good. So before they opened the first one, DQ, along with a few others, Smitty, our executive chef, they traveled all over. They went to KC, they went to Austin, they went to Nashville, and they were just hitting up all the chicken joints. And then we, landed on this really, really good chicken. It turns out it's gluten-free. It wasn't intended to be made gluten-free, but when we did all the taste tests, flour has the gluten in the flour is actually really rubbery, and to get that really, crispy, crunchy fried chicken quality, you actually don't want there to be any gluten in there. So we use a gluten-free flour. And we have pressure cookers that look like, you're entering a submarine. You got to turn down the freaking crank on it. The pressure fryers cook them perfectly. So you got a freaking plate of perfect fried chicken. What else would you want than an easy drinking beer with that, or 3 easy drinking beers with that?
No, I hear you, man. I'm with you 100%.
Yeah,
we have a lot of fried chicken and beer around here in the Carolinas for sure.
Yeah.
So I can relate, man. In fact, my mouth's watering just thinking about that.
I can mail you some. It's almost better the day after, the cold chicken. Oh, so good.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. If it sits in the fridge overnight, no, I hear you, man.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. So, okay. So, what is these are some of the things you really love about it. What's the most challenging thing about what you do?
The most challenging thing, like you just said, staying relevant
Yeah.
with the craft beer scene. It's tricky out here. You can get really popular for a minute there, and then 4 new breweries pop up, and one of them's doing some really fucking out there shit that catches the eye.
Yeah.
So I think just staying relevant as a brewery while still staying true to the morals. We make comfort beer. Pushing that, seeing how far we can push that. Making a hop bursted malt liquor is definitely pushing that a little bit. We want people to come in here and feel comfortable and not challenged, but you got to kind of challenge people sometime with the beer and be like, I know your concept of a malt liquor is 40 of OE or King Cobra, but all it is at its heart is a strong corn lager. We decided to, go super heavy-handed on the hops. It's basically an IPA, but it's just kind of staying relevant in ways like that and having fun while still kind of staying within the comfort beer, easy drinking parameters.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, there's so many breweries out here. I think just staying relevant is probably one of the biggest challenges. And then another challenge for us is, we are a restaurant run by a restaurant group that has a brewery attached. So a lot of the people that we have coming in here, a lot of guests that we have coming in here, they're coming for the food.
Right.
They're not necessarily coming for the beer. So, figuring out ways to educate those guests, get beers in those guests' hands, and getting them coming back not just for the food but for the beer as well. That's always, I don't know if I'd call it a challenge, but that's always something fun that we're always working on. Just building the beer culture as well as the food culture.
Well, it's interesting because you had sales experience and you were given that choice of do you want to get into sales or into the brewing, and you took the path you did, but then that sales experience, I would guess, probably helps you a lot because you're probably having to sell, not sell them, but educate and fire up your folks internally about why the beer's great and why you're doing the new malt liquor or whatever. There's a lot of salesmanship that comes along with that too, just persuasion and keeping people excited and fired up to go out and educate your guests, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, tons, and that's where my front of house experience works really well too.
Yeah.
Because when I worked at Zolo, it was all tequila and mezcal, so I really learned how to get people who didn't think they liked tequila. I got them to like tequila.
Nice.
So I can go out and talk to my staff at a pre-shift about this malt liquor, and I can figure out ways to get them to get that beer into their customers' hands and to get their guests to enjoy it and order another one.
Yeah.
So I think the sales helped, but also my front of house experience really helps while, working in this brew pub. Because I have that floor experience, did it for 11 years. I know how to talk to tables, so now I know how to talk to the servers who are talking to the tables.
Yep.
It's nice. It's nice. I loved working front of house, so it's nice that I can still do that. Because there is a small part of me that has a passion in serving tables and just making guests supremely enjoy their experience and just taking care of them.
Yeah, man, for sure. Let me ask you this. So you've been with this group for a while now, and you're part, as we said, a part of a great group that's given you lots of opportunities to grow, it sounds like, which is great, and that's what everybody wants. What would you say to people that are getting into the restaurant business that, are looking for restaurant jobs or trying to find good groups to be a part of, places where, folks that are not just doing it, as a side gig to get through school or whatever, but people that really want to invest into a career in the business? What advice do you have for things that people should look for? Because you certainly found a lot of that in your experience, I think.
Yeah, just, things I would look for and things that I found with Big Red F. It's just that respect and that culture. I felt respected as a 23-year-old server from my management and my owners. As long as I came in and worked hard, I always found that respect. And with that came that autonomy and that independence, because you want to find someone who's going to let you kind of express yourself, regardless of what that is, whether that's in the kitchen or whether that's behind the bar. Just basically having that support. I think having the ownership and the management be a huge support is vital, because if you don't feel support from them, you're not going to care as much about your job. But when, it's family and it feels like family, it's not just, oh, I didn't do my job. It's, oh, I didn't do my job and I really let my family down.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think looking for those things, I mean, that's what made me latch on to Zolo so much, is there was such a culture and a friendship with everybody there. On a busy night, if someone needed help, it wasn't, oh, my coworker needs help. It was, oh, my buddy needs help. I need to help my friend. I need to help my family. So I think just looking for that kind of support and that kind of culture is the biggest thing that I would look for. Because with that, it comes you holding yourself accountable. And with that comes you working hard, and many doors will open when that happens.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. All right. And well, I know you're busy. I think you said you were walking around working while we're doing this, which is freaking awesome. What that actually makes me wonder, like, what is a typical, your days probably vary a lot, but what does a normal day look like for you? Are you spending a lot of what are you doing most of the time?
So most of the time is, it's a 10-barrel system.
Okay.
So each batch I brew yields about 20 kegs. It's a one-man show here. So, today I'm moving beer from a fermenter to a serving vessel so we can carbonate it and then keg it and then, get it ready to pour. And then tomorrow I'm going to fill that fermentation vessel back up with a beer. So tomorrow's a brew day. The day after that we filter, there's keg days. On down days you're doing a lot of cleaning. And then there's, the front of house component too, creating resources for my staff, creating resources for staff of the other post restaurants and the other bigger at F restaurants, giving brewery tours to our other locations. When I'm not doing physical work in here, it's either planning or it's some sort of educational resource or training that I'm trying to do. So I can still use that front of house and that sales ambassador role and, go down to Denver to one of our accounts or go to one of our other post locations. So yeah, it's every week's a little bit different here, and it's a good mix of physical labor, the creative side of your brain, the math and science side of your brain, critical thinking, problem solving. It really works every part of your brain and body. So it's pretty cool.
Dude, that's awesome, Nick.
Yeah.
Is there anything, before I let you go, is there anything else you wanted to wrap about, or anything I didn't ask that you
No,
wanted?
I don't think so. I mean, the main thing that I wanted to touch on was just the Bigger at F culture and the Bigger at F, support and stance on, being a giant family and how much that has helped me. I think if I joined another restaurant group that opened a brewery, I don't know if my path would have been the same.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd be head brewer at one of our locations. But just walking into the culture I did and having that resonate with me, that kind of got me where I was going. And that's pretty much was my main thing that I wanted to, tell to you.
Well, this is really good. I'm really enjoyed. This is awesome because, mostly I think a lot of the listeners on this podcast are other restaurant owners or they're aspiring owners, and then sometimes staff as well. But, one of the great things is hearing that perspective from you, how important it is for owners to develop that kind of culture and that cultivate that feeling of family, treating staff with that amount of respect and all the things that you've articulated so well. It's just such a critical part because, frankly, it's very hard. I hear from so many owners now, it's very hard to find and keep good people now. But y'all have done a great job of that, and it appears to me that that's just a big part of it. I mean, Dave talks about this stuff, but it's clear that it's not, that it's clear that it's authentic and that it's executed on really well there, because a lot of people talk about that, but then, to hear that coming from you is really refreshing and inspiring. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share all this. And man, you've clearly got a lot of passion for what you do, and it just rings out in your voice just listening to you talk about it. So thank you, man. I really enjoyed talking to you very much, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Of course. I appreciate it too. This was fun.
All right, man. All right. Thanks, Nick. Have a good one. We'll talk again soon.
All right. You too.
Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.